of the things that I've been doing to encourage you to invite your friends to come to Unity of Birmingham is giving you some things that you can say to people when they ask you, well, what is it like? What's your church like? What's Unity like? And I know one of the things that people run up against here in the South and other places as well is there are some people who kind of wonder about the fact that we meditate. Am I right? I'm not making this up. They're well, what is that meditation thing all about? Why do you do that? Why don't y'all praying like good Christians? So this is, from an extract from this handy little thing I've got called Is Unity a Christian Church? And it speaks directly about our practice of prayer and meditation. And I thought, especially for today, because we're going to be talking a lot more about meditation today, this is really good. And it's a simple thing you can remember. Through meditation, we experience the presence of God. Right? Through meditation, we experience the presence of God. And it's not like, we just kind of veered off into an Eastern path. Even those of us who are familiar with the 12 steps, and I know I talk about this a lot, but, you dance with who brung you. As we used to say back in West Virginia, right? You dance with who brung you. But the 11th step says, through prayer and meditation, right, we improve our conscious contact with God as we understand him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So it's, and those folks were pretty, it's primarily, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants that wrote that stuff. And they had a really good point because there's two sides to the coin, and what we like to say is that prayer is talking to God while meditation is listening. And in the chapter that we're studying this week, which we've been studying Lessons in Truth, and we are actually in the chapter called Finding the Secret Place. Those of you who were with us last week know I actually talked about the secret place, but I didn't tell you how to get there, right? So what we're talking about this week is how you get there. And one of the happy things about being there, Dr. Katie describes in this chapter, and if I can find it, I'll read it to you directly because it's really sweet the way it's written. But she quotes an author who apparently was popular at the time. Here we go. In one of Edward Everett Hale's stories, he speaks of a little girl who, amidst her play with the butterflies and birds in a country place, used to run into a nearby chapel frequently to pray, and after praying always remained perfectly still for a few minutes, waiting, she said, to see if God wanted to say anything to her. Children are often nearest the kingdom. In the 4 T's, which is a prosperity program that was written by a Unity minister who was also a student of the 12 steps, not me. His name's Stretton Smith, and that teaching's been around for a while, and we're actually going to do it again this fall. Paige is going to be back there waving her hand, is going to teach the 4 T's, and if you're interested in going through that, it's a great program to help you ramp up your prosperity. But anyway, Stretton tells a story during the process of the 4 T's about how the Hawaiians breathe life into their prayers. And what they do is they'll pray and then wait and breathe life into their prayers. And if you've ever been on the islands, or if you've known somebody from the islands, you know that they tend to call us from, not from the islands, haoles, right? And it's sometimes a pejorative. But the actual, idiomatic translation of haole means without breath. And it was because the Hawaiians noticed that while they would, stay at the chapel and breathe life into their prayers, the Westerners, the folks, white-skinned folks like me, would come in, go to church, go into the chapel, pray, and just leave, right? So there is that practice of waiting on God, waiting to hear what God has to say is, it's not just us, right? It's a fairly well-established practice. So we think of prayer as talking and meditation as listening, and that's maybe a little bit of an oversimplification sometimes. But if you're trying to convince Aunt Marge that we're not all a bunch of Satan worshipers, maybe that'll help. Through meditation, we experience the presence of God. So, in finding the secret place, and for those of you that weren't here last week, the secret place, the short version of the way that Dr. Katie describes it, is that place where our human consciousness and our Christ meet. Right? That place where our human and our divine come together. So, our desire to be there, she says, is something that, it may feel like it comes from us, but, our desire to be in that secret place with God is really God desiring to know itself through us. That it is a divine urge to be in a divine space. All right? So one of the things that we don't have to do is push to get there. And that's why Let It Be was such a great song for today. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let's just let it be. And if we are open and receptive to it, the desire of God to know God through us will express itself. It is sometimes almost always a practice in patience. Okay? And I know as someone who's spent 32 years in the Army National Guard, my sense of patience may be better developed than some people's. As a parent of a couple of daughters, also, got a little practice in patience there. But it's not something that we can push at. And it's interesting the way that Dr. Katie describes it. She says some people get white-faced, trying to, I'm going to meditate, right? So there's some common misconceptions about the kind of meditation that gets us into the secret place. It doesn't have to hurt, right? I know some of us, we see, people, sitting cross-legged, and it's like, I haven't sat cross-legged since the Carter administration, okay? That's not going to work for me. You don't have to do that. Meditation does not require that we sit a certain way or, we sit on a little bench. I actually have one of those little benches. One of my buddies in seminary made it for me when we were in school. He was making meditation benches as a way of helping to put himself through school. But I don't have to sit on my meditation bench to meditate. I usually meditate in my recliner. Why? Because it's comfortable. All right? I can breathe in my recliner just as well as I can sitting on a meditation bench. So whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be something where, it's not like lifting weights. If it doesn't hurt, it's not doing me any good. Right? So, and we can start off easily. My wife began running with a program, she does marathons now, but she started off with a program where the first time she went out and ran, she only ran for a minute, right? Now she runs for 6 hours when she runs a marathon. Right? We went out and ran 7 miles last night. I was kind of a mess by the end of it, but, the scale liked me better this morning, so, I'm going to keep doing that. But, you also, in addition to not having to strain and, really work at it, like, right? You don't have to say, I'm going to meditate for, 15 minutes today. I got this, right? That discipline is like most other disciplines where we want to start small, right? Have small successes and then grow from there. Now, Dr. Katie describes a lot of things about meditation. I'm going to throw some of those in as I talk this morning. But essentially, what she describes the preparation for meditation, the practice of meditation that takes us into the silence, and then what happens afterwards is something that in Unity we kind of came up with and said, okay, you know what that is? That is a 5-step process, right? And we now have what we call the 5-step prayer process, and it's really based on the parts of meditation that Dr. Katie described in that book, back over 100 years ago. And the 5-step prayer process is relaxation, concentration, meditation, realization, and thanksgiving. And I'm going to walk you through those so maybe you can help remember them. All right? So the first thing that we do when we're getting ready to meditate is we need to get into some relaxation. Now, what Dr. Katie describes is, first of all, she says, well, don't try to start off doing it with other people because there'll be a distraction. Go get by yourself, get someplace where, you can just let everything go, right? So one of the things that she does not do is she does not go into some of the physical ways that we have of relaxing. But for a lot of us, it really helps. And for some of us, it's absolutely vital to get some kind of a physical connection. Now, she does mention that one of the things that we don't want to do is cut our bodies off from this experience. So, there's some people that think that if their body is at all involved, that they've somehow failed, that meditation should be an entirely, mind and spirit-based thing. But, our Eastern friends have known for a long time that there is a body connection into this, and that's why yoga is a thing, right? Yoga is not just aerobics for yuppies, right? Or wasuppies, which would be, young suburban professionals. But anyway, the whole point of yoga is not just to work up a good sweat and stretch yourself out, but to get you into a meditative state, which at the end of a yoga session, if you've ever done one, they usually put you into shavasana, which, apparently is not Sanskrit for, oh, thank you, sweet baby Jesus. Which is like, finally, I get to just lay here. Right? In the puddle that I've created. I've been doing yoga as well, and I kind of got booted into the intermediate class because that's the one Laura does, and I don't think I'm intermediate. Anyway, what it does is it is a preparation. It is, and it's a relaxation, because as you're getting all stretched out, you're stretching all the kinks out, and in the process of focusing on all the things that your body has to do, it relaxes your mind, because your mind can't really be thinking about all the going on, right? When you're trying to focus on not falling over, right? So it's really an excellent way of doing it. For some people, like running is a great way of getting into something meditative, or rowing, or anything that's just simple and rhythmic and gets our breath really moving. Right? So, and speaking of the breath, the other primary way that we can relax ourselves into a meditative state without working up a sweat is simply by breathing. And so I want everyone to just kind of get back into our little meditative place for a second here. Take a deep breath, close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And as we sometimes go into meditation, we simply focus on the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. No need to force the breath to do anything differently. We're simply being aware of our breath as it moves through us. Noticing the air flowing, feeling that flow of air as it goes into our lungs and back out. We may notice where we feel the movement of the air the most. For some of us, it might be in our nose or on the back of our throat or in our chest. We're not changing it. There's nothing right or wrong. We simply follow it. We simply notice it. And as we continue to breathe, this focus on the breath allows us to relax, to release, and let go of the rest of the cares on our mind or in our heart. Now, there are some specific breathing techniques that we can use as well, and one that I will teach you right now is taught in several places, but Brene Brown calls this the square technique. And in this particular method, we breathe in for a 4 count, hold the breath for a 4 count, release for a 4 count, keep our lungs empty for a 4 count. Inhale. Hold. Release. Hold. And after a few moments, a few cycles of that square of inhaling, holding, releasing, holding, we begin to relax and move into a meditative state. So if you're still breathing, please come back slowly and easily as you are able. So breathing, simply breathing, it doesn't require any special equipment. You don't have to have anything with you. You don't need to change into your yoga stuff and get your yoga mat out or anything like that. That's something that we can do anywhere. And I can tell you from personal experience, once I began using meditation as a tool, it became absolutely vital to me in places where I was under extreme stress. And I've been remembering, as I was getting ready for this talk, the time around my mother's death. I remember being at the hospital there in South Carolina and sitting on a couch out in a lobby area and meditating. And then after she'd actually passed, and we were doing all the things that we had to do, being in a hotel room with my brother and sister, and just told them, hey guys, I need about 10-15 minutes to meditate. And just laying back on the bed, and they were still talking about some of the preparations that we were making, and I was just out of it because I needed that time. I needed to go in. All I had to do was breathe. I didn't have to do anything special. And it's wonderful to have that tool available to us. Now, I will tell you that there is something really wonderful that I use all the time, and that is an app called the Insight Meditation Timer. And I'm going to pull it up here if I can get my phone to cooperate. No, I didn't want Moto. I'm doing this without my glasses on, so you have to bear with me. Anyway, the icon for it is a little white square with a little gong, one of those little gong bowls in it. And so it's called Insight. And if you go to the App Store, and it's either Apple or Android, you can go in, and there are literally thousands of free guided meditations, right? If you're like somebody that likes to have someone, like some sound or some talking. And then there's also a timer that you can set up, and it'll like begin or end with little gongs that you can program in there, and it'll also do ambient sound. Like I like to have the sound of water running. It's like a brook, bubbling while I'm meditating. So it's and it's free, right? There's a free version, and that's the one I've been using for years and years now. I'm approaching 1,000 sessions with my meditation timer. So yeah, it's not all the meditation I've ever done, but it's kind of cool. I have little stars. It keeps track of your progress, and you get little stars. When you get to a milestone, if you get like 10 days in a row, you get a little star. So it's a very, very useful tool. But you don't even have to have that. You can just meditate just with your breath, right? So our first step is relaxation. We need to relax into it, and that idea of letting it be. Now, you can get too relaxed, okay, and that's called napping. And it has happened. There have been times when I've said, I'm going to meditate, honey, and it becomes a nap. All right? That's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But, and it was funny as this was coming to me, when I read the thing about being white-faced and straining about it, the image that came to me, and it's probably because, I'm a dog owner, but there's like, a dog that is ready to, listen to its master, right? So it's just sitting, kind of got its, head up, kind of alert, right? Now then there's the dogs who are like jumping up on the window, like a little chihuahua thing, and you don't want to do that. That's kind of straining at the bit and getting white-faced, like Dr. Katie's talking about. We don't want to do that. And then there's also, when the dog gets too bored and just lays on the floor, and not really ready to do anything. We don't want to be the passed out dog, but we also don't want to be banging on the door, right? We just want to be present and alert, right? I think Dr. Katie refers to it as a passive alertness. So that's kind of the idea when we get into our relaxed state, right? So relaxation is the first step. Then the next thing we do is concentration. And it seems kind of counterintuitive that we're going to, relax and then be concentrating on something. But the idea is we give our mind something to do. And she talks about this and says, that basically nature abhors a vacuum. And so if we attempt to empty our mind, something's going to come in there, right? Now, very often what will come in, and she uses the examples of a broken shoelace or, some gossip that we may have heard last week, and then so for us, it might be a problem we're having with our car or something we read on Facebook this morning, right? A few years later on, we have different things that tend to occupy our thoughts, but still something's going to try to get in there. So her idea was that we think about God in one way or another. And one of the things that she says that we could do is, for example, and these are all just examples, you can kind of go with whatever ends up working for you. But one example was she began the 103rd Psalm, which has some great affirmations. And she was using the King James Version in there, which it's kind of become unnatural for us to use these and thys and thous in our way of speaking. So I took a look at the interpretation from the Common English Bible, which I highly recommend just for reading and for understanding it, because it uses Common English like we speak today. So this is the beginning of the 103rd Psalm. Let my whole being bless the Lord. Let everything inside me bless his holy name. Let my whole being bless the Lord and never forget all his good deeds. How God forgives all your sins, heals all your sickness, saves your life from the pit, crowns you with faithful love and compassion, and satisfies you with plenty of good things, so that your youth is made fresh like an eagle's. There are several great affirmations in there if we word them right. God or Spirit heals my sickness. God crowns me with faithful love and compassion. And we can take any short statement like that, where we simply think on our connection with God. I am God's love expressing is a great one. And we use that as a mantra over and over, right? That will get us, into the mood. She also suggests hymns. And, we have some very simple chants that we sing here all the time. Thank you for this day is a good example. Thank you for this day, Spirit. Thank you for this day, right? So we can use these simple ideas, these simple affirmations. It can even be as simple as just saying the word Spirit, or if it connects with you deeply, the word Jesus over and over, right? It doesn't have to be anything really creative or special. It's what fills your heart, or maybe what addresses your special need for today. If you got a boo-boo somewhere, maybe it might be, about healing. If you are feeling a pinch financially, it may be about abundance. God is my unlimited source. But it's something that in some way ties us to Spirit. And so we concentrate on that. We focus on that, rather than just attempting to leave our minds empty, which is going to be really tough, and we're going to be fighting with that the whole time. Now, there will be times when other thoughts intrude, and there are several things that we can do when that happens. One of those things is simply to go back to our breathing, right? If I realize, oh, geez, I've been thinking about, Game of Thrones for about the past 5 minutes instead of actually just meditating here. Okay. All right? get back into noticing the breath, or doing that square breathing, or whatever other breathing technique that you found that you like. Some people will do the thing where you breathe in through one nostril and breathe out through the other one, right? There's several different things that we can do with our breath. One of the visualizations that Reverend Robert Brummett, who is a fairly well-known Unity author, he was one of my instructors, one of my primary instructors in seminary. One of the visualizations he used to do when he was teaching us meditation is to think of the thought stream as a literal stream, as a river. And when we have a thought about something, to visualize it as like a stick or a log, something floating by on the river, which is very useful because we don't get inside it. We remain in that place where we're observing the thought, and we are allowing it to pass by, right? So that can be a very useful way of visualizing that, and simply letting the thoughts go. We don't need to be mad at ourselves when we think while we're meditating, because then that just takes us down the wrong rabbit hole, right? It's just, we can even affirm, this is working through me now, God is working through me now, right? And simply let that piece go. So at a certain point in that cycle, we've done our relaxation, we've been doing our concentration, we're, meditating on our mantra or the word or whatever it is we're using. It might even be an image. We might hold an image of something that is sacred to us. You might use an altar, right? If you want to set up a little altar at home. You can even set up a little traveling altar. You can have things that are sacred to you that you take with you when you go someplace. But when we have focused in on that and we feel ready, then it is time to spend time in the silence. And it is in the silence that we in Unity really believe that we come to that secret place. So we allow ourselves time in the silence. And, I will say again, if you're new to meditating, if you haven't really focused a lot on meditation, don't try to force yourself to spend large chunks of time in the silence. Don't try to force yourself to go do a half an hour in the silence on your first meditation, because it's very likely that, the monkeys will be, chattering up here, and the squirrels will be running around, and you'll end up frustrated and say, this stuff doesn't work, right? Well, the first thing I'll tell you is something that I tell people who are new in 12-step when they say that I've tried meditating and it doesn't work, and I tell them trying to meditate is meditating. And for those who are having some difficulty with the God thing, I tell them trying to pray is praying, right? I still have struggles sometimes as I meditate, and I've got almost 1,000 sessions just with that app, right? But I've also gotten to where, now when I have the time, which is not as often as I'd like, when I'm preparing a talk, I'll meditate for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours if I can get it, right? But you don't jump to that, okay? You start off with a minute or two, just like my lovely wife running, right? You just do it for a little bit, okay? You spend time in the silence. Now, like that little girl who, would run into the church and pray and then listen to see if God wanted to say something, you may get something, all right? Now, one of the best tools I can give you is when you meditate, sit down with something to write with, right? Or if you're somebody that likes digital, have a little notepad open on your phone or your pad or whatever it is. If something comes to you, just immediately write it down and then let it go, right? Because what your temptation will be is to take that, whatever it was, the name of a person, or, I had this great idea, and then you'll just grab that, your mind will grab that and start running with it, right? If you get this great idea, you're going to be thinking about that and adding stuff to it, and how do I do it, and who do I start with, and where am I going to get the money, and all the things that we think about when we have a great idea, right? And we'll start thinking about that. And that's not why we're in the, we don't want to do that thinking about it in the silence. We want to allow it to come to us in the silence, right? Or if somebody comes to you, somebody's name, somebody's face, I haven't heard from so-and-so in a long, gee, I wonder how they're doing. Well, the last time and you go and you start thinking about them. Just write it down, let it go, right? Then when you come out of meditation, you may have, a little list of things. It's like, I'm going to do some of these. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to work on this idea. I'm going to call so-and-so. I'm going to Facebook so-and-so. I remember when I was deployed, I was meditating, and one day one of the congregants, her face came to me in meditation. And so I waited until it was nighttime my time, and it was, daytime here. And I got in touch with her. And she was doing okay, but her partner was having some issues that she was concerned with. And it was interesting because in my meditation, she kind of came to me, but she didn't say anything. I could just tell there was concern in her face, So I was glad I reached out. And sometimes that's really all it is, that person maybe just could, stand to hear from us. And that's a great thing. So, but we get the information, we lay it aside, and we save it for when we come out of meditation, okay? So, the next phase is realization. And it may very well be that, we come out of the silence and we're like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do with that, and sometimes we'll go in with a question, right? Should I should I apply for this job? Should I move? Should I date this person? Should I, whatever it is, right? And we simply just let go of it, right? Let go and let God. We just say, okay, God, here it is. And at some point in that silence, we may get this brings us to realization. It's kind of like the processing of anything that came to us in meditation. And at that point, we kind of allow our mind to get engaged, but what we engage it with is whatever knowing came out of meditation. And finally, we give thanks. We give thanks for whatever it is that came out of our meditation. And this is really vital. Even if you didn't figure out the meaning of life, you didn't come to 42. Even if you didn't figure out the meaning of life, you can say, thank you, Spirit, for your love. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this nourishment that I received in the silence. Being grateful drives the engine of abundance forward. So we finish by being grateful, right? And Emily talks about that, about how our gratitude is important to us, right? And then the thing that we take from beyond the meditation, which is something that I love how she describes how important it is to all of these processes that we do in learning truth, is that when we're done, we don't just keep it to ourselves, we share it with someone else, right? That the idea that, I go into the silence and I only come out with something for me, no. When I go into the silence and I come out, hopefully I come out a more centered, more relaxed, more connected with Spirit, more loving human being. And I go out and I spread that around. When somebody cuts me off in traffic or is rude to me at the grocery store or is tough on me in my workplace or whatever it is, I can do a little 4 square breathing, and I can remember that I'm supported and loved, and maybe that person needs a little bit of that support and love that I can bring into the world today. And I can be centered in who I am. I don't need their approval. I don't need their happiness. All I need to be is God's love in expression right here, right now, today. And for me, that's what happens when I've found the secret place. And I invite you to join me there. Thank you.